Hello, I'm Mr. Baxter and I'm here in the chapel at St. Joseph's College to explain to you about the organ and why it is known as the king of instruments. The organ is a woodwind instrument, and like every woodwind instrument, it involves air being blown through a pipe. Now, the pipes are up there, and they're controlled from down here, the organ console. And like all woodwind instruments, the air is blown through the pipe, and that creates sound molecules that vibrate, making a different kind of sounds. On the organ console, there are different keyboards, otherwise known as manuals. There are two here, and there's another one down here, which is played by the feet. These manuals are known as divisions, and they have special names. This one is called the swell, this is the great, and this is obviously the pedal division. The great organ, or the great division, is called that because it has the main foundation stops, otherwise known as diapasons. So if I put the diapasons on, those are up there, those are the main stops on every organ. The swell organ has these pipes here, and they're contained in a box with a Venetian blind mechanism, a bit like the kind of thing you'd have at a window. And that opens and shuts with this pedal here, which means I can get from playing very quietly to very loud by just opening and shutting the box using that pedal. And these stops over here are the pedals, which are a different division of the organ entirely. Each of these buttons, or stops, controls a collection of pipes which are identical in the way they produce a sound and the sound they produce, but slightly different lengths. Now, if I select this one here, the 8-foot diapason, and press this bottom key here, that pipe is 8 feet long. And if I play middle C, it sounds at exactly the same pitch as middle C on a piano. So 8 feet pipes on an organ are at piano pitch. If I halve that and select a 4-foot pipe, it sounds like this, an octave above. And if I halve that and select a 2-foot pipe, it sounds another octave above. So you get 3 different pipes creating 3 different pitches by playing one key. Similarly, if I double that length of 8 foot to 16 foot, I now have a 16-foot pipe playing an octave below, and the longest pipe on this organ is the 32-foot contra bourdon, which, if I play this pipe here, is 32 feet long. And you can hear that vibrating in the chapel and almost feel it. There are a couple of other pipes on this organ which don't have such clear lengths, and they're called mutation stops and mixtures. This stop here, the 12th, is known as a mutation because it's 2 2/3 feet long, and it's called a 12th because it plays 12 notes above the note you play. So, for example, I would play this note and it sounds like that. On the 12th, I play that note, it will sound like that. So let's give it a go. This is what you expect to hear. At the 12th, you can hear it's playing 12 white notes above. So adding a mutation stop creates quite a different kind of timbre to the music. Mixtures, such as this one there, and these 2 mixtures there, are collections of pipes which are very small and create a high pitch. and are like Mutations, but they would never be played on their own. Instead, you'd add them to a chorus of diapasons, for example. So you'd end up with something like that. Let's now look at some of the different kinds of sounds produced on the organ. A lot of these stops are designed to replicate and imitate orchestral instruments. So first of all, we have our diapason, which sounds like this. We also have a flute, or a stop diapason. And that pipe is wooden and square and has a stop at the top, and it creates a completely different sound. On the swell, we have another flute, and another diapason. We also have two string stops, the echo gamba and the voix celeste. And they're meant to sound like string instruments being bowed, and they're slightly out of tune from each other to create a slight wavering effect. There's also a bassoon stop. Trumpet at 8 feet, a 4-foot trumpet, and an oboe. Back on the grate, we have a trumpet, a clarinet, flute, and the loudest stop, which is the pontifical trumpet. The main stop on the pedal board is called the bourdon, and some people think it's a corruption of the French for buzzing, because it creates a low buzzing sound. There's also an 8-foot version, which has a bit more depth, and a 4-foot flute as well. There's the trombone, and a 4-foot trumpet. So when you combine different stops together, you create something called a registration. So here's a very basic registration, 8/4/2. But then you might want to add your mixture and your 16-foot. And you'll probably want to add some pedal stops as well. Here's another registration. It's the full swell, and it's quite an interesting sound because you have all the main stops in the swell organ, and you can make it quieter and louder and give it quite a powerful effect. Now, when you're playing something, you've got two ways of changing these registrations. You can either play something and take away the stops as you play, or there are a series of pistons here which are played by the thumb, which are operated by the thumb, called thumb pistons, and if you look, you can add and subtract stops depending on which number you press, and generally the higher the number, it means the louder the combination and the number of stops on. Finally, there are non-speaking stops, which we call couplers. So we can combine everything we have here on the swell with everything here we have on the grate by pressing this stop here, which is swell to grate. So that means the swell is combined onto the grate. So here we are without it. Add the swell to grate. Doubles the volume because we've got now both things playing. And similarly, grate to pedal means that we can combine the great organ and the swell organ to the pedal to create a very, very loud organ. And finally we have this stop, which is a tremulant. I switched on. Nothing is played because it's a non-speaking stop, but what it does is it cuts the flow of air. So it's a bit like vibrato when you're singing. So if we hear the oboe now, add the tremulant, you can hear it's got these waves. It's not a complete sound, and that's what the tremulant does. So I hope this video shows you why the organ's been nicknamed the King of Instruments and how much you can do with it and what kind of sounds it produces.